Okay, I got the old recording in progress notification there, so that's a good sign. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our event today. I'm going to have a sip of coffee to start us off. Ooh, that's good crema. It's clearly coffee made by a talented coffee machine user, such as myself. You can hear me push up the sleeves on my sweater, and that's a good sensitive mic. So good morning, everyone. Hopefully, we've got audio this time, because last week I neglected to have my audio coming through. I should probably just double check. My little mic is showing that, so that's a good sign. It looks like I've got everything set up. So I am hoping that I've gotten through the worst of this stuff and I'm succeeding at broadcasting at this point. It's a learning process. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the concept of a context in ontological leadership. And I'm going to explain what that means, but as a bit of a precursor, I suppose. This is probably the most important distinction in leadership, in my experience, in transformational work, in leadership, and in any conversation about causing a real transformation that really makes a difference. And this is the thing that we don't see. So what we're going to be doing today is introducing this idea of a context and help you see how it's really that part of the iceberg we've been talking about up until this point, that 90% under the water. Or another way to think of it is like the current you are caught in. If we're all in an ocean kind of witnessing each other, your context is the current you're caught in. And then other people have their context. That's the current they're caught in. So we're going to distinguish this idea. We'll explain why it's important, how it shows up in the world, help you see how to like work with this in leadership. I'll use some examples so you can kind of gain an understanding of how this plays out and start to see how this is inadvertently impacting your leadership. We'll talk a little bit about what your resistance will sound like or what other people's resistance will sound like. And then we'll talk about what we can do with it. So we'll, as always, aim to finish with some ideas about what you can do to actually work with this rather than just have an idea, but no way of working with it. So, ooh, you know when you go to take a sip, but you breathe in a little bit? That just happened there. I managed to avoid coughing for the next minute. So I'm doing a little better than I could have been doing otherwise. All right. So this idea of a context is, like I said, it's a little bit like the current we swim in. And our context is really, the way we humans operate is we believe that our thoughts, our opinions about something kind of emerge from this like blank slate, this tabula rasa. So I have a thought about that thing, or I'm witnessing your leadership, but we don't really see our, what some people will call like biases, and, or in this language, like our context. And because we don't see that, we assume it's not really there. Like, oh yeah, I think I'm pretty objective in this particular matter. And there's some stuff where we're like, yeah, maybe not so much there, but for the most part, we believe that we're fairly objective, which gets us into trouble. And so our context is really all of the stuff, all of the kind of beliefs about the world, all of the stories we have about ourselves, all of the stories we have about what's appropriate. It's the entirety of all of our beliefs and the way we hold something that guides the way we look at it, the way we relate to it. And so the easiest way to start describing a context is to think of it as a set of beliefs you have about any particular thing. Beliefs, stories is another way to think about it, opinions about it, truths. You know, often our beliefs don't occur like beliefs, they occur like truths. So I might have a belief, like I might have a context around how to be on the bus. You can have a context, and you can and do have a context about everything. But let's work with this weird example I'm giving you. So we have a context about the right way to be on a bus. When you get on a bus, the thing to do is to find your seat or to sit down. And I have a context that playing loud music is obnoxious. So don't do that. That's wrong. And generally speaking, do not talk to people on the bus, and especially don't talk to women. And part of the reason for that context I have is because women generally feel a little more vulnerable than a man does. And when a man comes and sits down on a woman, sits down and starts talking to a woman, it like imposes, there's like maybe some aggressiveness to it or some patriarchal stuff, or just like if nothing else, it might feel unwanted, but they don't feel like they can say, I don't want this. And so it's an imposition, it's intrusive, all that sort of stuff. Now, you may not share my context. You may have an entirely different set of beliefs about what's appropriate on the bus. You might be someone that's like, the best part of my day is when someone sits down on the bus beside me, and the best part about someone else's day is when they get a chance to connect with me on the bus. And that's totally okay. Something that's interesting is often we don't, remember I said our beliefs don't always we don't relate to our beliefs as truths. Oh my goodness, I'm having a hard time with that sentence. We do not relate to our beliefs as beliefs. We relate to them as truth. So someone might be like, no, 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 Adam, it's not a belief that women feel that way. It's a truth. And so this is the first part of what makes our context a little challenging, is it doesn't occur like something we've come up with. It doesn't occur like something we've created or fabricated or like it's untrue, or it just occurs like, no, that's an objective truth in the world. But there are people that don't share that truth. In fact, there are women that don't share that truth about being talked to on the bus. And they may enjoy that. They may revel in that. They may love that. It may be the best part of their day. So we have these beliefs about the way it is appropriate to be on the bus. And those beliefs color the way we relate to the world and the actions we can take. So when someone shows up in a way that's counter to my context, counter to my beliefs, I'm going to be incensed or offended or annoyed, or I'm going to have a particular opinion about them because they don't align with the beliefs I have. I might be like, this person's obnoxious and oblivious. This person's ignorant. I'm going to conclude that because I don't see that I just have a set of beliefs about the right way to show up. I have a story that that's the truth. And if you don't see it, you're obviously ignorant. And they may have an entirely different way of showing up. And it's going to dictate the set of actions that are available to me. If I believe it's inappropriate to talk to people on the bus, I'm not going to have talking to people on the bus as an action that's available to me. Or if we want to get more nuanced with that, I do have that as an action that's available to me, but it's an action inside this, like, what I'm doing is inappropriate and it's obnoxious and ignorant. So I can take the action, but the action will be colored with all of those things, as opposed to like the opportunity I don't have available to myself is I can talk to people on the bus and feel good about it. I can talk to people on the bus and just feel completely at ease doing that. That is not available to me because it's going to get filtered through my context. So this is the first place that people can start to get a little bit caught, because they're like, well, I don't really think that my beliefs impact my actions. I can do anything. Anything is possible. Yes, but your experience doing that stuff is going to be colored by your beliefs about what you are doing. So sure, I in theory could, sit down and just start hitting on someone like aggressively on the bus. That's available to me. But for someone like me with a set of beliefs in the context that I have, that's going to feel awful. I'm going to feel bad as I do it. Here's another example that might be a little less incendiary. I might be a salesperson and I might have the ability to cold call, but I might have the internal belief that cold calling is obnoxious and I'm interrupting people in their day and people don't want to hear from me and people don't like when I'm doing this. And as a result of that, I can call them, but that's going to be my experience. My experience is that I'm calling them through all of that noise, and that's going to color the experience I have. And so this is why when we tell ourselves like, well, I know what I need to do, I just need to do it. I just need to learn to be okay. It's because our context has us. We can't see that. So I've given you a bit of a basic idea of how like a context sits. Next, what I want to do is like really fill this in so you can get like a nice big picture of it. And then we're going to start to talk about how it shows up and why it's so important in leadership. Hello, all four of you watching. Thanks for being here. Put your name in the comment or say hi. Put something over there. Just give me a what's up. Let me know who you are. It'd be nice to put a name to the little icon there. So the way a context is composed of three primary things. The first is our beliefs. Our beliefs, our stories, our opinions, the things we hold to be true. And some people like to get into analyzing our beliefs, sort of like, oh, well, is that a belief you got created, or was that an implanted or an inherited belief? Personally, I don't think that that's very useful. How you came by your belief is however you came by your belief. You arrived at it honestly, one way or another. Obviously, perhaps because people told you that growing up, or perhaps because your parent hammered that into your head, or perhaps because you went to church, or perhaps because the parent or guardian that you had, or the teacher at school really, whatever. It doesn't really matter how you acquired it, because at this point in your life, it is yours. By whatever mechanism it came into you, it is now your belief. We learn a variety of ways. And so I want to invite you not to get caught too much in the interesting, I'm putting in quotes, the interesting exploration of how did I arrive at this belief? Because ultimately that's a distraction. What's more powerful than how did this happen or why do I have this belief is coming to an acceptance that you have that belief and what next? What do I want to do from here? So that's where we're angling towards, as opposed to analyzing how we got here. So you've got your beliefs about any particular thing. And from those beliefs, you will take a particular set of actions. You'll have a set of actions that are available to you and another set of actions that kind of aren't. And by kind of aren't, what I mean is that sure, I could go and like snatch someone's purse. That's physically possible. I'm not barred from doing that by the universe, but I'm not going to, because I have a belief that that's wrong. And furthermore, hey, Jared, good to see you, man. Furthermore, I'm aligned with society's belief that that's wrong, and the justice system and the fact that we punish people for doing that and all of that sort of stuff. So that's how all that goes. So I have my beliefs, and those lead to a particular set of actions that are available to me that I'm going to take, as well as a particular set of actions that I'm absolutely not going to take. So hopefully you can already see, as soon as we have a belief about something, and we have a belief about everything, it immediately narrows our window of availability, of available actions. Because of that belief you have, certain actions are available, certain actions are limited in scope, and certain actions are straight up unavailable. The limited in scope means, yeah, you can do it, but you feel bad doing it. So it's not going to be your best work. So our belief leads to our actions. I'm drawing a triangle here. Beliefs lead to our actions, and our actions lead to a world around us that is a reflection of those actions. Meaning, if I have a story about what's appropriate on a bus, I'm going to start to judge. Some of the actions I'll take is that I will, hey, Leo, I will judge people that that act differently on the bus. I will avoid those people. I will turn away from those people. And over time, I will also go and complain to my friends about those people. And if I happen to have people in my life that tend to be that way, they're slowly going to just kind of drift away from me. We're probably not going to stay in tight relationship because the way they show up makes me feel awkward because I have a story that's wrong and I don't like being with that feeling. So over time, the actions we take from our beliefs lead us to a particular environment or world around us, a world that is consistent with those beliefs. Here's the one that I often use is imagine you have a belief that to make money, you have to work hard. And consistent with that belief is the second belief that those people that have a lot of money but aren't working hard are either lazy, lucky, or thieves. I'm removing a lot of nuance here just so that we can make this a nice simple example. So we've got this set of beliefs, and then I'm going to go into the world and I'm going to conclude, well, I want to make money. So what do I have to do? I have to work hard. And so I'm going to take the actions consistent with that. I'm going to look for the jobs that reward you for working hard with a lot of money. I'm going to go to school to take the degree programs that are consistent with that. I'm not going to go and try to find jobs that reward me for working very little with a lot of money because I'm going to be dubious of them or skeptical of them or, whatever it happens to be. And so I'm going to end up working at a place that rewards me this way, that's consistent with my beliefs. And by doing that, I'm going to be surrounded by people that are doing the same thing. They have the same set of beliefs that I do. We're consistent in that regard. We're all going to kind of look sidelong at people that are sort of making money that seem not to be working that hard. We're going to have judgments about them. We're going to collude in those judgments, agree with them. Look at that person. Oh, what a thief or whatever. And so what happens is that the way we act creates this world that's a reflection of our beliefs. The beliefs lead to our actions. The actions lead to us being surrounded by a world consistent with it. And so what happens at the end to close this loop is that our world, our environment around us, reinforces our beliefs. So if someone said to me, Adam, look, buddy, it's just your story, man. You don't have to work really hard to make money. I would say that's wrong. That is not just a story. Let me tell you, and I'm going to take you through my life, and I'm going to point to this stuff. I'm going to point to all the people that I've found, the evidence I've gathered, where they made a bunch of money, but they were found out to be crooks. Evidence that is consistent with my belief. That's the stuff I'm going to let in and hold on to. I'm going to point to how like the last 3 people at my job got fired because they weren't working hard enough, right? Of course, because the job that I have rewards people for working hard. So that's the thing that gets looked for. I'm going to point to my earnings and how like the harder I worked, the more I made. I'm going to point to all of this stuff. And what it all does is it reinforces this belief. It reinforces the idea that work hard, make money. That's the game. And so that becomes not just a story, it becomes truth, it becomes reality. And so this is the point where there's nothing wrong with any of this. And you can't avoid this either. If you're hearing this and thinking like, oh, that's great. Okay, I'm gonna just not have a belief, or I'm gonna not like attach to any identity. You can't do that because that becomes the new identity. You become the non-belief haver. You become someone whose belief is that beliefs are bad. And well, guess what? Now you're going to take actions consistent with that. You're going to create a world around that. You're going to have limited option set, blah, blah, blah. So the game here is never to remove or eliminate a context altogether. That would be inhuman. That's like becoming a rock or something. To be human is to have a context. Just like to be able to see is to have a viewpoint. You cannot witness the world absent having a perspective, a subjective viewpoint. So that's the nature of this context. Okay, so there's a couple things that fall out from the way a context works and where it leaves us. The first is that on one level, a context is very efficient because it surrounds us with people that believe in the same things that we do. We get a flow that is aligned with us, and we end up in a world that is consistent with our own beliefs. And so things go along. There's certain things that are available to us in a context, and those things we get to have in our life. So inside this triangle I've drawn out, I get to have a lot of money provided I'm willing to work hard. And up to a certain point, I might be satisfied with that. The downside to a context is it also eliminates certain things. Certain actions are not available to you, at least alongside feeling a particular way as you take that action on. And certain aspects of life, certain ways of experiencing life, certain parts of your world become unavailable because they're not allowed by your context. If I suddenly decide that I want more connection in my life and the way and place that I want to do that is on the bus, that is unavailable inside of the context that it's inappropriate to talk to people on the bus, blah, blah, blah. And of course I could do a bunch of bizarre machination to try to make this happen. You know, I could figure out a way to like, okay, well, I'm going to make sure that I'm always riding the bus with friends. And now I can connect with people on the bus. I can shoehorn it in, but it's not really the breakthrough result that I want. It's still inside this same box that I'm locked into. And so what happens usually as we age in our life is in our 20s, we're putting together a lot of this stuff. We're really getting good, better and better at taking actions consistent with our beliefs, concretizing our beliefs, concretizing our actions, and creating a world around us that's consistent with them and that feels pretty good. And then as you move into your 30s, usually mid 30s, 40s, starting to move into your 50s, you start to recognize that there's some impacts to these choices that you've made, impacts that you may not want to continue having. So you might be like, yeah, I get to work hard and I have a lot of nice money, but I don't really get to spend it much because I don't have any time because my time is all taken up. And so this is where a context gets in the way because we can't see any option other than what is allowed by the context. And here is where we have to talk about the 4-hour work week. So A context does not force you into a particular path. The I have to work hard to make money, that belief and the world it creates around me and the actions it guides me into does not require that I work hard. There's another option inside this context, which is if I don't want to work hard, I have to be okay not making money. That's allowed inside that belief structure. And so what you see happen when people read, they get fed up. They're like, ugh, I don't like having to work this hard. I like the money, but so rather than see the context they're in and do something about it, they fall down this path of kind of, okay, well, what can I do? What is the options that I have? And we can't see box we're caught in. It doesn't occur at all like that to us. So instead, what happens is we take the other side of what's allowed by this context. If to make a lot of money, you have to work hard and you don't want to work hard, then you have to learn to be okay or figure out a solution to not needing a lot of money. So I can save up a whole bunch of money. I can do like that 4-hour work week thing. I'll save up a whole bunch of money and then I can not work hard. Aha, I've solved my problem. Or I could take a sabbatical every 3 years. Or I could just drastically like downshift my life. I can make my life very simple. I could really reduce my costs. And then I can, I don't have to work very hard and I don't need very much money. And at first this occurs like a breakthrough. It'll occur like a totally different solution. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. Finally, I don't have to work so hard. What a relief. And at first it is a real relief. But over time, what's happening is that we haven't actually created any real shift. We're still caught in the same box. We've just learned how to kind of solve for the equation a slightly different way. Or the way one of my teachers used to describe, we've learned how to rearrange the furniture in the same apartment. So it occurs a bit differently. Well, it's the same apartment. You haven't really radically changed anything. And so this is what most solutions in the corporate world, in the leadership paradigm, what most solutions look like is there's no ability to distinguish the box we're caught in. Instead, we don't see it at all. We just see like, well, this is what we're currently doing. This is what we want. Let's go over here. Impossible for this person inside this context we described would be a result like, I want to make twice as much money and I want to work half as much. That's unavailable. Instead, what happens is a game of compromise. Given that I want this, what do I have to let go of? And so the irony is that our attempts to create change, our belief that we're really shifting something actually reinforces the context we're in. We can't see that it's doing this, but it actually reifies it. It further makes it real because we're just playing out a new version of the same game inside of it. And that just confirms that that's the way things have to be. So beliefs become actions, actions create a world, and a world confirms our beliefs. So when you have someone come up to you, when you work with like a half-baked coach, or you sort of hear someone make a post on social media or whatever it happens to be, hire that leadership consultant, they're like, well, that's just your story. Your frustration is legitimate. Because on the one hand, they're right. It is just a story. But on the other hand, that story has been made real. And so it is just a story, but it's also reality for you. And that's where this is a little bit tricky, because if it's not just your story. And as you start to try to do something different, you're going to come into conflict with the world that you've created around you that's a reflection of this old pattern. So we'll start to come to that. But first, I want to talk about why this is important in the realm of leadership. So most leadership practice has zero awareness of this, no understanding of the idea of a context. And so instead of seeing all of this with altitude when we're working with someone or when we're working with ourselves, we don't see any of it. We just see the person in front of us and we have a belief about what we need to do with that person. We can't see any of our own internal structure. We can't see our context. So imagine that I've got someone at my job who comes to me and he's like, I'd really like to figure out a way to like have work-life balance here, but contribute to the extent that I want to contribute and to make the kind of money that I want to make. Now, if I have this context, this belief internally that like, well, you have to work hard to make money, I'm not really going to be able to help this person. I mean, that's not entirely true. I can help them a little bit. I can help them figure out how to be okay with working really hard. I can help them figure out how to be okay working less hard and having less money. But that's basically what I can help them with, because I can't see that I'm locked in a context. I can't see the current I'm stuck in. And so consequently, I'm powerless to help them do anything other than work from within that current. I can help them achieve any solution available inside the box I myself am stuck in, but nothing outside of it. And so this is why a lot of leadership is kind of, it causes a lot of disillusionment, because the promise of things being different is there, but in practice, it's not actually available because the leader is not actively engaged in their own work. They're not really seeing this. And so first and foremost, as a leader, part of what you have to do is learn to distinguish the context that you're in, the current you are swimming through. So you can start to see that and understand how that impacts what you have available to support people with. And the second thing is we need to start to be able to see other people's context. If we can't see their context, we are going to be unable to really help them. At best, we'll be able to help them continue to like churn inside of the box they're stuck in. And what tends to happen, because none of this is really distinguished, and because most leadership doesn't involve like the support of someone outside of you, that sort of stuff, you have a leader who's oblivious to their context, and you have someone that they're leading, the leadee, who's got a context of their own that's oblivious. Neither of them can see any of this. And then you just have someone giving advice or trying to support someone. And what is available is basically like that part of the Venn diagram where their two contexts meet. So you can, these are the solutions available. We can talk about this other stuff, but ultimately you need to get on board here, and then I can help you find what will work inside here. And so consequently, most leadership conversations talk about being outside of the box, but because they can't even distinguish their box, they're actually conversations that reinforce the box. This is the tragedy of leadership. This is the unfortunate part of leadership. This is where leadership gets stuck. It cannot see its own box, and consequently it ends up reinforcing the box. And it does that in the name of good, you know? So this isn't something to be condemned. It's just something for us to start to be able to distinguish, to understand. Okay, so the way I like to think of this, just to give you an example, so you can see how this kind of works, is a parable one of my teachers used to share about how this plays out in like any kind of coaching or leadership conversation. So we will imagine we've got a coach, and this coach is walking along, and they meet someone, and they notice this person's in a hole. There's a person in the hole, and the person seems kind of upset and frantic. And so the question that we always ask is like, what do you think that a coach would do in this situation? Some people are like, oh, reach down a hand and help him out, or teach him how to build a ladder, or like tell him like, hey, how do you want to get out of this hole? And what we don't realize is that all of those have an implication, which is being in a hole is bad, or even this person doesn't want to be in the hole. Like you shouldn't be in a hole. We don't know if that's true. We have no idea. So that's our context. If this person doesn't want to be in the hole, but we're trying to help them get out of it, well, that's a bit problematic, right? That our leadership is going to not actually serve this person. It's going to be serving us and our own beliefs, but necessarily this person and what they're trying to create. There's another catch to this, which is imagine that this person does want to get out of the hole. Okay, so far so good. They're like actually quite desperate to get out of the hole. We could support them to build ladders better. We could sit down, we could get into the hole with them and sit down and like read a book on carpentry and teach them how to scavenge wood from the hole and teach them how to build a ladder faster. But let's imagine that the real issue is that this person has a tendency to blunder into holes. They walk around with their head in the clouds. They don't look where they're going, and they keep falling into holes. And they've got a context that supports that, of course, right? That's the reality that's getting created by their context. They've got a context that like, it's good to look up towards the sky, for example, and then they walk and they fall into holes. If we help them get better and better at building ladders to escape the hole, we are not actually serving them. All we are doing is speeding up this cycle. We help them clamber out of a hole, and then they fall back into the next hole faster. And then they get better at getting out of that hole, and then they fall into the next one even faster than before. And that becomes the game. So even though our leadership is intended to help and to support and to move them forward, and we can even pat ourselves on the back and be like, I got that guy out of the hole in a way no one else did, we didn't actually create anything different because we didn't distinguish the greater context at play. So even the best intentioned leadership people often defend. It's like, no, I did good there. Because we can't see the context, we can't see that actually often all we're doing is perpetuating the issue. And this is why a lot of like leadership consulting, a lot of leadership approaches, why they have such good intentions, very well intentioned, but don't make the difference that they're striving to make. In fact, actually just lead to things being more and more the same, more and more as they are. So let's talk about what our resistance sounds like as we approach this. Anytime I begin to support someone with this, the first thing we want to do, I'll use an example, is like a common one from a number of my clients is this story that people don't want them to win. People are looking to have me fail. People want to see me fail. That's a really common one for people that have come from like a racially charged atmosphere, that have felt the impact of racism, systemic racism, if not overt racism. It's a common one for women to have, as they move out, as we shift beyond the patriarchy. And it's also a common one for men to have, especially these days, because now the pendulum's kind of swung to the other side. And so you have a lot of men who feel like, well, I look like Adam. I'm a white male, tall white male, devilishly attractive, great voice, whatever. And people don't want to see me succeed. They want other people to succeed. So people, blah, blah, blah. I want to invite you at this point to sit down if you're like, yeah, but it's different or like to get into the weeds of like an argument about privilege or something like that, because that's not where we're going. So just don't worry about that. The thing we're looking at is this belief, people don't want me to succeed. And so when I start to support leaders in this thing, the first thing that they've got is an abundance of evidence for people that don't want them to succeed. This person did this. This person did that. This person did that. This person said this thing at that point. This person looked at me this way. Much of that evidence is probably true. And that's fair. We don't want to take away from that or diminish that or change their lived experience. So this work is never about diminishing something. Instead, it's about expanding our altitude, rising up so that we can see a larger part of the picture. And so what that often looks like when I'm working with people is first we begin to look at this belief. What is the belief about people and your leadership? Okay, people don't want me to succeed. Okay, what else? People want me to fail. Okay, what else? People they don't want to see someone that looks like me succeed. People actively are trying to whatever. So we look at all that. And then we start to look at like, okay, what do you do as a result of that stuff? So some of the things that people can tend to do, myself included when I have this, we can become very hyper motivated to like prove our credentials. Given that you're already looking for me to fail, I'm going to try to get 1 foot ahead of that and preemptively tell you why I'm going to succeed. And what's something else I might do? I might hide any vulnerabilities that I have from you. I'm not going to project I'm going to avoid authentically sharing where I'm worried or anything because you're just going to use that against me and proof and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to keep that from you. And so on and so on and so on. We could keep building this out. And then we start to look together at like, what's going to be the impact of acting that way? And so some of the ways that we might imagine that would show up is like, you can even do it in this moment. You can imagine when you sit down with someone and you say like, how's it going? And the first thing they tell you is about the 3 degrees that they have. What are your thoughts? And how do you relate to that person? What do you decide immediately about that person? What do you conclude about them? How do you feel about them? And you don't have to share yours in the chat, though I would love to see that. But for me, I'll share mine. Mine are like, this person's a blowhard. I want to find the flaw in this person. I want to see this person fail. I want to take this person down a peg because this person's arrogant. That's what happens when someone starts. So there's an irony here. Their belief is that I want to see them fail. So they try to get out in front of that by like projecting confidence and victory and win. And that actually creates in me a desire to see them fail. And this is the nature of how a context works. it creates the very thing it's ostensibly designed to avoid. This is like a funny way that the law of attraction actually plays out in reality. You know, the thing that we are trying to push away actually ends up being the thing we draw towards us. Because in order to push, you have to stay connected with it. So we keep it near us. So as we start to look at this, what starts to happen is that they start to see slowly, oh my goodness, I might be creating some of the very thing that I'm up against. The way the resistance to this idea sounds is, yeah, but these people do this. I have evidence that these people do this, right? That's how we resist taking a look, is we're like, but this really happens. And the challenge for our leadership is, yes, totally. Almost certainly that's correct. I'm going to take a sip of coffee to let that sit. Totally, that is correct. Think about that. So that's 100% accurate. And whilst there's nothing wrong with that, the truth is we can do little about those people. And more important to the conversation, the discussion is, sure, maybe those people are doing that. But if you are co-creating this, if you are responsible for creating a portion, even 10% of this dynamic, it doesn't matter how much you try to surround yourself with people that don't do that, you're going to keep creating this. This is the essence of transformation, by the way, and transformational leadership is helping people see their responsibility in creating the very thing that they say they are dead set against having happen. And this is also quite tragically why a lot of like DEIB efforts actually end up creating more of the same, because we don't have this sort of ability to see things through this light. We can't take responsibility because we're so focused on fixing what's out there. And before we can fix what's out there, we have to notice internally. We got to take a look. So that's kind of our resistance, is our insistence, our focus on the people outside of it. But they do this, but my boss is really doing this. And the truth is you're probably right. You're not crazy. You're not stupid. You're not a dum-dum who's unwilling to like take a look. You're in these conversations and it doesn't matter. What matters is the thing you can take on. And what I find happens is as people stop playing these sort of games, as people start to distinguish the context, the box that they're stuck in, and start to change it, what happens is that those people start to leave or they start to change themselves. Because yeah, maybe someone does want me to fail. But as I start to like become honest about the fact that like I'm worried I'm going to fail. And as I start to share with them like, hey, you know, I've got this story that you want me to fail. And as I take full responsibility for that and just share like, you know, I'm sorry for putting that on you. It's not who I want to be. I'm starting to really learn like this is my fear projected. As I start to do that, what's happening is you're opening your heart to people. And as you open your heart to people, their heart will open to yours. Maybe slowly, maybe not as much as you wish, but it will happen. And as that happens, these things like this dynamic where I kind of preemptively boast about my accreditations and then you situate yourself so that you want to see me fail, that melts. It starts to melt away. So as we do this, an entire new set of options becomes available. And this is why this is so powerful in leadership. As I start to discover, oh, I'm creating the reality of my beliefs, which is then reinforcing my beliefs. If I can start to see that, I can start to realize I have a choice because I created all of this. And if I created all of this, I can create something else. And we're going to start to talk about how you do that in a sec. Leo writing a really good comment here. Thanks for that comment, Leo. And it says, you know, this sounds like what happens in romantic relationships too. We keep recreating the same dynamic in relationships. This is absolutely what happens in romantic relationships. And the biggest challenge there is we're like, no, but my partner really is a narcissist. And the place to look is, how are you keeping yourself small? How do you sort of create that reality for yourself? And we don't want to do that because we're absolutely dead set certain that my partner's a narcissist. And a lot of therapeutic models actually buy into this. They label someone a particular way, and then someone in their partnership, it's sort of like your choices you're left with are like, well, look, your partner's a narcissist. So what do you want to do about that? You know, the person's set, as opposed to this being like a context where both people can kind of learn about their own current and start to do the work. Okay, So this is so powerful because if we can start to see how we're creating the very thing that we are arguing is holding us back, then we can start to change it. We can start to take ownership of the fact that, oh, I'm creating that issue. And we can start to create a new set of beliefs. We can change out those old beliefs for a new one. This is harder than people posting on social media would have you believe. This is not as simple as just closing your eyes and clenching your fists and telling yourself a new belief and posting it every morning at your door. So you just repeat to yourself, I am whole and complete, and just insist that. Because if you want to change your beliefs, remember that that's going to run into conflict with the way you've been acting for the last 10, 20, 30 years. And if you change the way you start to act, that's going to come into conflict with the world that you've created around you. None of this is a problem. It's just something to be aware of. And it's worth noting that it's not as easy as get rich quick type people would try to sell you on. This work takes work. So as we start to change our beliefs, we're going to start to take different actions. And as you start to take different actions, that's going to create conflict. It has an impact because now you are going against the grain of acting that you have established with the people around you. If I suddenly start to show up at work and talk about like, you know what, I'm looking at this job and I think it actually I'm thinking we're working a bit too hard here, guys. That's going to be a bit confronting for people because they all have a colluded, bought into belief. You work hard to make money. And they're either going to push me into one of those two directions we distinguish, right? Either, well, if you want to make money, Adam, you should probably not look at that thing. Or, yeah, you could do that thing, but you won't make money at it. And as I start to act in alignment with the new belief I want to create, what's going to happen is those people are going to have a reaction to it and they're going to fight me on it. And some of the world around me might move away, might do something different. That's okay. This is what they call integration. This is where you are integrating a new belief into your life. And at first, as you start to do this, it's going to be messy. This is what we call a breakdown in this work. It's where the comfortable consistency of the way your life worked inside the existing context is no longer there. You're changing the way you're being, and it's doing some sort of energetic violence, some damage to the way things were, the status quo. If you're willing to keep practicing, over time, your environment will start to readjust, your belief will start to take a little more root, your actions will start to feel a little more natural and authentic, and then the cycle becomes a virtuous cycle. It reinforces itself. So all of this is self-reinforcing. And as we do that, we change our beliefs, new actions become available. We say new possibilities become available in your leadership, such as the opportunity to make money without having to work quite so hard, or to have your company be a company where people can make more money without just having to pay for more hours being worked on, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's what's available down this path. That's the power of a context and shifting a context. And we're going to finish up here today just by talking about how you can actually work with this. So the starting point for this work is to distinguish your own context, not to do anything about it, just to notice it. If all you did, like if you were trying to change something and all you started to do was be able to see the current that you're swimming in the ocean, that's going to help. And that's where this as a starting point is really valuable, because as humans, we want to rush to we want the result yesterday, but that doesn't tend to be the way it goes. It takes some practice, some time to integrate. There's this trope about ayahuasca, plant medicine, where they say, it's like 10 years of therapy in a week. That's great. But that has a story attached to it, which is that the ideal way to experience therapy is 10 years worth in a week. And what these people touting this trope don't realize is that that's great that you had 10 years of therapy in a week, but now you have 10 years of integration to do. And so you gotta weave this back into your life. And a lot of people don't realize they go away, they do this work, they come back, they've changed their beliefs, they might start taking new actions, but they're going to come into conflict with the world they created. And that's the integration process. So what we can do to get with this as a starting point is you can begin by looking at like something that you have a complaint about, some persistent kind of complaint like, this always happens, or at work, this person drives me nuts this way, or these kind of people, something like that. And you can begin to look at it through this lens that we've introduced. So you can start by like, what are all my beliefs about this? You can even look at it through the lens of like someone in traffic, the way people are in traffic. What are the beliefs I have about traffic? What's appropriate? What's inappropriate? What does it mean when someone does this? What does it mean when they don't do this? So begin by distinguishing your beliefs. Second, and ideally come up with like 10 beliefs, get robust. The more you can get down, the better insight you have. If you're just like, I have a belief that people with money are good people, and that's as far as you go, then that's the level of depth to which you will be able to see the current you are in. So if you really want to distinguish this better, go further. Don't let yourself off the hook that easily. So we start at like, whatever your beliefs are about the thing. Second, get clear, distinguish for yourself, what are the actions I take as a result of those beliefs? What do I do? What don't I do? What am I willing to do? What am I unwilling to do because of these beliefs? And finally, you can get clear, like, what is the world that leaves me with? And an easy way to think about that is like, what is left impossible for me as a result of these beliefs and actions? What's impossible is like a good idea. It helps you see how your context affects you. What's the impact of it in your world? So what is available in my world? What is always there in my world as a result of this? And what is impossible for me as a result of these things? And that helps you start to see the current. And from there, you can start to see the places where you might have a blind spot in service of someone else's leadership. I'm just going to read what you wrote here, Leo. Leo wrote, I'm wondering, could the idea that changing our context or beliefs takes hard work also be a context? Yeah, absolutely. All of this is, so Leo's suggesting like, what if it didn't have to be hard work? What if changing our context or our belief could be really easy? And he's absolutely right. We could hold that belief too. The thing I'm intending to do here is invite people to let go of the addiction we have in the modern world to solving things quickly, to like taking a pill and having the solution done, to working with someone for 3 sessions and being complete, to like overcoming 20 years of trauma in a week, to letting go of that a little bit. So it doesn't have to be hard work, but it'll take as long as it takes. And being willing to embrace that is much more powerful than hanging on to this insistence that there's a way they should go. And so that's really what I'm intending here, rather than suggest that this has to be hard, more an invitation to let go that it has to be easy. It doesn't. It can be however it can be. And what matters is that we're moving through something and creating some transformation. Okay, I'm just going to check and see if there's anything. I'll have a final sip and see if there's anything else I want to talk about here. I think we nailed it. So that's everything we've got for you as far as context is concerned. I'm noticing that these events draw in maybe 4 or 5 people. And so I think I'm just experimenting with this medium right now. So going forward, I might try a few where we just go live in the moment and see if that draws anyone. And the other thing that I'm distinguishing for myself is LinkedIn is a platform where people don't necessarily go to hang out. I don't think people scroll as much on LinkedIn as they typically would do on other platforms. I certainly don't, which is saying something because I don't scroll much on any platform. And so I'm dubious that this is necessarily the way to engage with people. And so some of the things I'll just share briefly by way of finishing up today. I'm considering creating a private group for people that really just want to be engaged with this conversation so that we can create some exclusive content there and have a little more of a discussion. Have things sort of ongoing and be something that can live and continue to grow as opposed to like a one-off and then it's done. And that way this stuff will be a little more persistent because, you post this, it's in the feed for a half a second and then it's gone forever. So I'm looking into all those things. I'll probably share them as we go forward, make some kind of announcement, do some kind of live. Thanks, Leo. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, whoever else was hanging out. Thanks for tuning in before we go to the weekend. Have yourselves a great Saturday and Sunday, and we'll catch you guys next week. Bye-bye.